I think for every sex offender who's trying to reintegrate into society, the first thing is to remember life is not over. Although he may be stigmatized by some, he does not have to carry a permanent stigma in his own mind, and that his life can be far better than it ever was before. I think for every sex offender who's trying to reintegrate into society, the first thing is to remember so much of the time we're on our own. Unless we find a good therapy group, unless we find a good support system in our families and our friends, we're going to be feeling very lonely. If we're alone or in those groups of support, we're still going to need to focus on three things. The first of which is making sure my career is jump-started again. If I've lost my former career and I can never go back to it, I've got to reinvent myself. Sometimes that means career counseling. Sometimes it means going back to school. Sometimes it just means really taking some time to reflect and to think outside the box, because you may be doing something that you've always wanted to do but never dreamed you would have the opportunity because of your prior commitments. The second thing I like to see every offender do is work intentionally to develop a social support network. Real friends who are a positive social influence on his life. We could start with some of the guys in his group, perhaps, and I think that's a good place to start to get the feel for it. But the men in his group are usually precluded from being active members of his social circle because of the conditions of parole or probation. So what we'd really like to see is for the recovering offender to look deep inside of himself, maybe for the first time ever, and figure out what he really likes, who he really is, the kinds of, and for many offenders, this is a first. They've never done it before, and you find out, well, that's in fact part of why their sexual crime occurred in the first place. These were men who had no life. They had no fun, they had no interest, they had no hobbies, they had no academic or scholarly pursuits, they had nothing going on in their lives. They were using sex as a substitute for all of those things. So finding out what I like, whether it's academic or even career-wise, or what interests me in terms of recreation, and then hanging around those activities and those venues that support those activities.